Alien girl felt the human's breath align with hers. What she explained after dawn was healing. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The wind pressed against the canyon like a long, low hum, the kind that vibrated through Evan Brooks' chest plate with each fading gust. His landing module had given out just before dusk, its guidance system blinking out in a shower of harmless sparks, leaving him on foot with a half-charged heater pack and the sting of cold air slipping through the tiny cracks in his suit. He spotted the narrow cave almost by instinct, a dark seam in the rock where warmth might gather. The temperature outside wasn't deadly, but it bit hard, sharp enough to shake his breath out in little white threads. Inside, the air felt still, holding a faint metallic scent, almost sweet. His visor adjusted, revealing a silhouette deeper inside. A figure curled against the stone, faintly glowing along the edges the way bioluminescent minerals sometimes did under stress. He stopped, letting his eyes adjust. Not minerals. Not a hazard. A person. A girl. Alien in all the ways his training told him to be careful about. Skin a soft blue-silver, shimmering with each slow inhale, hair falling like strands of liquid moonlight. She wasn't hurt, not visibly, but her breathing was rapid and uneven, the way someone shivering on the inside might breathe. He knelt down a cautious distance away and set his heater pack between them. Its soft orange light spread across the cave walls, catching the faint reflective patterns on her skin. Her eyes opened, wide and uncertain, focused on him as if measuring intent through every twitch of his shoulders. He didn't move closer. He just nudged the heater with 2 fingers, sliding it a little nearer to her. Cold travels fast in places like this, he said quietly, keeping his voice level. You can keep the warmth if you want. I'm fine. She didn't speak, only watched, guarded but awake. Her breath hitched once, as if settling into a safer rhythm. Evan eased himself onto a flat stone, sitting where she could see his hands. No rush, just presence. The wind outside softened, replaced by the steady tick of cooling metal from his suit. After a moment, she shifted her head toward him, her gaze flicking to his chest, listening. Her breathing faltered again, then slowly matched the rise and fall of his, hesitant at first, then steadier, like she was borrowing calm the way someone might borrow a blanket. Evan didn't comment, didn't draw attention to it. He simply kept breathing slow and even, offering something warmer than the heater could. The cave held the quiet gently, as if it recognized 2 strangers learning how to share the same small pocket of air without fear. The cave held on to the night like it was afraid to let go, the cold lingering in the corners even though the heater pack had carved a small circle of warmth between Evan and the girl. Lyrian watched him with those pale silver-blue eyes that caught every flicker of light, her posture still cautious but no longer curled tight the way it had been when he first entered. She seemed to be studying him the way someone might study a new sound, unsure whether to trust it or brace against it. Evan adjusted the seal on his glove, more out of habit than necessity. His fingertips tingled from the drop in temperature, a reminder that he had barely made it here before the winds had turned sharp. The cave was not spacious, barely wide enough for him to extend one leg without bumping a rock, but the closeness felt steadying in a strange way. He saw Lyrian shift again. Her breathing matched his for several long seconds, then drifted slightly out of sync as if she were testing whether she still needed the rhythm. She lifted her chin a little, eyes narrowing with the kind of curiosity that did not carry fear anymore, just quiet judgment. You are not from here, she said, her voice soft, the echo pulled thin by the stone. Evan nodded. Survey mission. My module malfunctioned. I will need daylight to see what is salvageable. She tilted her head, the faint shimmer along her jaw brightening slightly as she spoke. Your breathing was steady. That helped. The admission came. Reluctantly, like she was used to sharing anything personal. Evan offered a simple nod. Not praise, not interrogation, just acknowledgement. The heater hummed between them, a small, almost hopeful sound. Outside, the wind began to settle, lowering into a far-off whisper. Lyrian eased her back against the stone, but he noticed the way her arms stayed close to her torso, conserving heat. Without breaking her line of sight, he slid his spare thermal patch across the ground. She hesitated only a moment before her fingers closed around it. Her touch made the foil glint, but she did not comment. She pressed it lightly to her collarbone, and a slow breath left her lungs, warmer than the last. Your kind usually keeps their supplies, she murmured. Resources matter. They do, he agreed. But so do people. Her eyes flicked up, catching his as if measuring the weight behind the words. There was no grand meaning to them. He had not planned the sentence. It was simply true. That seemed to disarm her more than anything else he had done. She lowered her gaze briefly, almost thoughtfully. A faint pulse of color moved beneath her skin, subtle as moonlight shifting across water. The cave's darkness softened around them, the quiet settling deeper. Evan leaned back carefully against the wall, feeling the stone's chill seep through his suit where the padding had worn thin. He focused on his breathing again, slow and even, not to guide hers but to settle his own nerves. He could feel her attention on him, not wary this time, but observant in a gentler way, as if she was learning the shape of silence shared with another living being. When she finally spoke again, her voice had lost its edge. The night will fade soon, she said. The storms pass quickly here. Good, he replied. We should both see daylight. She nodded, drawing her knees closer as the heater cast a warm glow across her skin. For a moment, the cave felt less like a shelter and more like a breath held between two strangers who were no longer entirely strangers. The first hints of dawn pressed softly against the cave's mouth, a pale band of light stretching across the rocky ground like a careful promise. Evan noticed it only when the air shifted, losing a bit of its nighttime bite. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to coax warmth into muscles that had stiffened from hours of sitting still. Lyrian stirred at almost the same moment, her silver-blue skin catching the faint morning glow in scattered highlights. The thermal patch still rested against her collarbone, dimmer now, but clearly still helping. She blinked slowly, as if returning from a place far quieter than the cave itself. Her gaze drifted to Evan first, then to the faint light at the entrance. The storms did pass, she said, her voice low but stronger than before. Evan nodded. Looks like we made it through the worst of the night. She shifted slightly, testing the movement of her limbs with careful precision, each motion smooth but deliberate. He watched her silently, not wanting to interrupt whatever internal check she was making. She caught his expression and gave a small tilt of her head, almost amused. You watch everything, she murmured. Not many do that without expecting something in return. Evan let a small breath out through his nose, almost a laugh, but quieter. Just making sure you are all right. That is all. She considered that, eyes narrowing briefly in thought before she pushed one hand lightly against the stone beside her, grounding herself. My kind is not used to shared spaces, she finally admitted. Especially not with someone unfamiliar. But you made the night easier. Her tone carried a quiet sincerity, so soft he almost wondered if he had imagined it. Evan adjusted the heater pack, tapping the display to check its remaining charge. You helped too, he said. Most people would not have stayed this calm. Lyrian lifted her gaze toward the cave entrance again. Calm comes when danger is clear. But you were unknown. I did not know what to expect. Her eyes met his again, steadier this time. Yet I was not afraid. The faint warmth behind the statement surprised him. It was not dramatic, not sentimental, but it carried weight. Real weight. He pushed himself up slowly, stretching his legs until the joints loosened. Sun's coming up, he said. If the terrain has not shifted too much, I can check the crash site. The module might still have what we need. She nodded once, but her attention lingered on him a moment longer before she moved. When she stood, the light caught her shoulders, revealing delicate patterns beneath her skin, like thin lines. Reflecting the dawn, she steadied herself with a hand on the wall, then released it when she realized she no longer needed the support. Evan took a few careful steps toward the cave mouth, scanning the horizon. The world outside was washed in soft gold, the remnants of the storm leaving behind a field of smooth stone shaped by the night winds. He heard Lyrian come to stand beside him, not close enough to touch, but close enough that he felt the warmth she had gained through the night. She breathed in deeply, then let out a slow exhale that matched the rhythm she had borrowed from him hours earlier. This time, The alignment happened naturally, without hesitation or fear. Her gaze rested on the horizon, but her voice reached him clearly. "The dawn feels different when you have company," she said. Evan glanced at her, but did not answer. He did not need to. The quiet between them carried enough meaning on its own, shaped by shared breath, shared warmth, and a night that had changed the space between two strangers into something quietly connected. The light outside the cave continued to rise, thin at first, then warmer, stretching across the stone like it was slowly waking the world. Evan stepped out far enough to check the slope, testing the ground with the heel of his boot. The storm had pushed loose gravel into shallow ridges, but the terrain still looked passable. Lyrian followed a few steps behind, her movements steadier, her posture taller now that warmth had returned to her limbs. The dawn reflected along her skin in faint metallic ripples, each one catching the light as she moved. Evan crouched near a patch of disturbed dust, running his fingers along a groove left by his landing module as it carved a shallow path before stopping several yards away. "It slid farther than I thought," he said, scanning the direction it had gone. "If the structural frame held, we might have a working beacon." Lyrian lowered herself beside him, her knees not quite touching the ground, her balance impossibly precise. "Your vessel made this trail?" Evan nodded. "The winds pushed it during the descent. Lucky it did not hit the canyon wall." She studied the ground, then lifted her gaze toward the horizon where the dust trail faded. "We can reach it before midday," she said. "But I should warn you, my senses pick up something faint. An energy signature. Not dangerous, just present." Her tone was cautious, but not alarmed. Evan considered that. "Could be a damaged power cell," he said. "Or residue from the crash." She made a small thoughtful sound, then stood, brushing her hand lightly over the air above the groove as if reading a temperature he could not feel. "It does not match your technology," she said quietly. "But it is weak. Old. Not recent." Evan took that in. It did not change their path, but it did make him more aware of the open distance they would have to cross. He dusted his gloves and rose to his feet. The morning wind brushed against them, not harsh, just steady enough to carry the faint scent of iron-rich stone. Lyrian watched him again, that same observational stillness she had used in the cave, but now softened by daylight. "Your kind moves even when tired," she said. "I can see it in the way you check your steps." Evan offered a small shrug. "We keep going until we reach what we need. Sometimes that is the only way things get done." She seemed to turn that thought over carefully, her expression unreadable except for a subtle shift in her eyes, like she was weighing the value of the idea. They began walking, their footsteps quiet against the stone. The sun climbed higher, warming the backs of their shoulders. Evan kept an eye on the terrain, marking each rise and dip while Lyrian's gaze seemed to track something he could not see, her senses tuned to wavelengths beyond human perception. They moved in easy silence for a while before she finally spoke again. "You gave me warmth," she said softly, "and breath. That is not a small thing among my people." Evan looked at her, surprised by the openness in her voice. It was the right thing to do. She held his gaze for a moment, the silver blue in her eyes reflecting the sky. "Among my people, right and easy are rarely the same. But you chose anyway." He did not respond, but the words settled into the morning air, lingering between them with a quiet gravity. They continued forward, side by side, the canyon stretching ahead in a pale gold line, the trail of the damaged module leading them toward whatever waited next, each step carrying the faint echo of shared breath and the fragile trust formed in the dark hours before dawn. The path toward the crash site unfolded in long, quiet stretches, the kind of silence that did not feel empty but carefully held. Evan kept a steady pace, measuring the distance by the shifts of sunlight along the canyon walls. Lyrian walked just to his left, close enough that he could sense her presence even when he did not look at her directly. The faint shimmer beneath her skin brightened whenever the light caught it, giving her an almost reflective outline against the stone. About a quarter-mile from the cave, the terrain leveled out into a wide flat ledge where the storm had swept most of the dust away. Evan stopped there, kneeling beside a shallow impression in the ground. The metal frame of his module had clearly bounced before sliding farther down. "It went over the edge," he said, leaning forward slightly to peer down the gentle slope. "Not far, though. Maybe another 200 feet. Lyrian stepped beside him, her eyes narrowing as she studied the same slope. Your vessel stayed mostly intact, she said. I can sense a steady energy pulse. Very weak, but consistent. Evan felt a hint of relief. That means the core did not rupture. Maybe the transmitter survived too. She turned her head slightly, her silver blue hair shifting like a ribbon of light. Your voice carries hope when you speak of it. He blinked, caught off guard by the observation. I guess it does, he admitted. A working transmitter means we will not be stuck out here. Lyrian held his gaze for a brief moment, the corners of her eyes softening. I do not mind the quiet, she said. But I understand that your kind does not live well without connection. Evan almost responded, but the way she said it, gentle, not critical, made him pause. Instead, he offered her a small nod and began descending the slope. The ground was smoother here, shaped by wind rather than fractured by rock. Lyrian followed with a lightness that seemed natural for her, her feet barely disturbing the dust. Halfway down, Evan found himself slowing without fully realizing it. Something about the air felt different, not dangerous, but charged subtly, like the moment just before a word is spoken. Lyrian stopped beside him. You feel it too, she said softly. Evan scanned the horizon. Something in the air changed. She lifted her hand, palm facing outward, the delicate patterns along her skin brightening slightly. Not harmful, she murmured. Just old, like a memory waking. He did not know what that meant, but the tone of her voice made him respect it. They continued down the slope until the damaged module finally came into view. It lay on its side, half buried in dust, the hull dented but mostly intact. Evan approached it slowly, running his hand along the cool metal. The impact marks were visible, but the core housing seemed unopened. We can work with this, he said, exhaling with relief. Lyrian crouched beside him, studying the dark seam where the hatch had bent inward. You have lived through worse landings, she observed, noticing his familiarity with the wreckage. Evan gave a short laugh. Unfortunately, yes. This one could have been a lot worse. She tilted her head again, watching him gently inspect the damaged panels. There was a strange calm between them, woven from the shared night and the quiet morning. After a moment, she spoke softly, almost as if testing the shape of the words. You helped me breathe, she said. Now allow me to help you. I can sense the internal structure without opening it. Tell me what you need to find. Evan paused, turning to her with a faint smile. I need the transmitter relay. If we can get that out, we have a chance. Lyrian nodded, placing one hand lightly on the module's surface, her eyes growing distant with concentration. The air settled around them again, warm and still, as if the morning itself had paused to listen. The metal beneath Lyrian's palm vibrated with a faint, uneven pattern, almost like the flutter of a distant heartbeat. Evan watched her quietly, giving her space to work. She kept her eyes half closed, her expression focused in a way that made the air feel still around her. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but certain. The transmitter relay is intact, she said, but the casing around it is bent inward. You cannot remove it from the outside. Evan crouched beside her, running his hand lightly along the hull. Then we open it from the inside, he said. There should be an access panel on the upper right. Lyrian traced her fingers across. The same area. Yes, I can feel the pulse of the relay behind it. She stepped back, letting Evan work. He wedged his multi-tool beneath the warped panel and applied steady pressure. The metal groaned a little as it shifted, not breaking, but giving just enough to let him slide his fingers inside. There, he said, exhaling slowly. I can reach it. Lyrian leaned in, watching closely but not interfering. Be careful. The energy signature is delicate. It feels like it is tired. Evan smiled faintly. Machines cannot get tired. She gave him a look, gentle and slightly amused. Everything gets tired when it carries too much for too long. He did not argue. Instead, he focused on easing the relay out of its slot. It was small, no larger than his palm, with a thin crack along one side where the impact had jolted it. He held it up carefully. If I can stabilize the connection, we can send a short-range signal. Lyrian's eyes followed the device, her expression thoughtful. Short range will not reach far, but it may reach someone. Evan nodded. It is worth trying. They sat beside the module, both of them leaning over the relay as he connected a diagnostic line from his wrist console. The screen flickered but stayed active, showing a slow, uncertain pulse. Lyrian lowered her head slightly, watching the flicker as if it were a living thing. Your technology has a rhythm, she murmured. Similar to your breathing. Unsteady, but persistent. Evan glanced at her, surprised at the comparison. I never thought of it that way. She reached out, stopping just short of touching the relay, as if sensing its energy through the air. You breathe differently when you work, she said quietly. Your focus settles your heart. The night taught me that rhythm. The words were simple, but the tone carried a warmth that reached deeper than the sunlight on their backs. Evan swallowed lightly, unsure how to respond without breaking the gentle balance between them. Instead, he looked down at the relay. If this works, he said, we will not have to wait long. Someone will pick up the signal. Lyrian did not look away from him. And if it does not work? He met her eyes, feeling the weight of the question. Then we find another way, he said. Together. She breathed out slowly at that word, her shoulders relaxing in a way he had not seen before. For a moment, the wind passed softly over them, carrying the warmth of the rising sun. The relay in his hands flickered again, this time with a steadier glow, as if it recognized the intention behind their efforts. Lyrian tilted her head, her voice barely above a whisper. Your kind always finds another way. Evan allowed himself a small, quiet smile. Only when it matters. They worked in silence after that, the kind of silence shaped by trust rather than uncertainty, their breath moving in an unplanned, natural rhythm as the morning grew brighter around them. Morning had settled into a steady warmth by the time the relay showed its first real response. A faint tone pulsed through Evan's wrist console, soft but unmistakable. He adjusted the alignment carefully, coaxing the weak signal into something clearer. Lyrian watched the shifting lights on the relay with quiet focus, her breath slow and even, as if she did not want to disturb the fragile progress. It is waking, she murmured, almost to herself. Evan nodded, tightening a connection point. If it holds steady for another minute, we can send a directional ping. She tilted her head. Directional? Aim signal, he explained. Shorter range, but cleaner. It will give us the best chance of reaching the survey craft. Lyrian absorbed the words with a slight narrowing of her eyes, the reflective glow beneath her skin brightening subtly. But before he could send the pulse, a soft tremor crossed the ground. Not violent, not alarming, but enough to send a shiver through the dust. Evan froze. Lyrian's head snapped up instantly, her senses picking up something beyond his ability to detect. The old signature, she whispered. It is stirring again. Evan scanned the horizon. The air looked unchanged, the canyon still bathed in soft gold. Is it close? She shook her head. Not close. Just clearer. Like it noticed us. He exhaled, steadying his nerves. We focus on the signal first. One thing at a time. Lyrian moved closer, her presence grounding and strangely reassuring. The quiet between them deepened as Evan initiated the relay sequence. A thin line of light traveled across the device, flickering once, then stabilizing. There you go, he whispered. Come on. Reach someone. The pulse transmitted, echoed faintly through the console, and then faded into the air. Evan held his breath without meaning to. Lyrian seemed to hold hers too, their silence aligning as if the moment required shared stillness. The console blinked red. Not enough power, Evan murmured, his voice tight. The relay will not hold a second pulse at this charge. Lyrian placed her hand lightly on the device, her eyes closing. I may be able to help, she said. Not with your technology, but with energy guidance. Evan frowned gently. Are you sure? She nodded. My kind interacts with energy fields differently. I can steady it. But, she hesitated, opening her eyes to meet his. You will need to hold the device while I do it. He understood the unspoken part. Her energy manipulation was subtle, intimate, requiring close alignment. But he trusted her now, deeply and without hesitation. Tell me what to do, he said. Lyrian stepped closer, positioning her hand over the thin crack in the relay. A soft glow spread across her skin, not bright, but warm, like light caught beneath water. Hold your breath for a moment, she whispered. Match mine. It will steady the field. Evan inhaled slowly as she did. Their breaths aligned, just as they had in the cave, calm and synchronized. The relay flickered, its pulse stabilizing in direct response to the shared rhythm. Lyrian's voice was barely audible. Good. Do not break the pattern. He held steady as the energy settled, the air around them growing warm and still. Then the relay lit up fully, brighter than before, its pulse strong and even. Now, she whispered. Evan sent the signal. This time the console responded with a soft tone and a green flash. Signal sent. Confirmed. The relief hit him in a slow wave. Lyrian opened her eyes, her breath releasing gently, her expression softening in a way that made the morning feel warmer. You did it, she said. Evan shook his head. We did it. For a long moment, they stood close, the fading glow of the relay reflecting softly between them, their breaths still unconsciously aligned. The relay's glow slowly dimmed to a steadier pulse, no longer bright, but stable, like a heartbeat settling after a long run. Evan slipped it carefully into the inner pocket of his suit, securing it against the padded lining. The console confirmed the signal had gone out, though it offered no estimate for when a response might return. The canyon around them felt quieter now, as if the land itself were holding its breath for whatever came next. Lyrian stepped back from him, her silver-blue skin still carrying the faint warmth of the energy she had guided. She looked at her hands for a moment, almost surprised by the soft glow fading from beneath her skin, then lifted her gaze back to him. You handled the relay well, she said, even when it resisted. Evan shook his head lightly. You steadied it. Without that, the signal would have failed again. She tilted her head, a faint, curious smile appearing. Humans always credit others, even when they did most of the work. It is unusual. He smiled at that, but before he could respond, Lyrian's expression changed. Her posture shifted slightly, her eyes narrowing toward the far end of the canyon. There, she whispered. Evan followed her gaze. He saw nothing at first, just a shimmer in the air where heat met cooler wind. Then he felt it, a soft vibration beneath his boots, subtle but consistent, like a slow, approaching hum. Is it the old energy signature again? He asked. Lyrian nodded, her voice dropping even quieter. Yes, but it is different now. Closer, more defined. Evan took a step forward, scanning the landscape. The shimmer grew brighter for a moment, then faded again, as if something were slipping behind a curtain of warm air. He felt the skin on the back of his neck prickle. Do you know what it is? Lyrian hesitated, which was unusual for her. When she finally spoke, her voice held a weight he had not heard before. It is part of my people's history, she said. A remnant of a time before we learned control. It should not be here. It should not still breathe. Evan turned to her fully. Breathe. She nodded once, slowly. Old constructs that respond to energy, intention, and presence. They were made to map memory, not to harm, but they do not understand the world the way living beings do. The shimmer flickered again, slightly closer this time. Evan felt the ground pulse beneath him, gentle but unmistakable. Lyrian stepped closer to him, just enough that their shoulders nearly brushed. It is reacting to the energy we released, she murmured. And to mine. It recognizes what I am, even if it does not understand who I am. Evan looked at her carefully. Is it dangerous? She took a slow breath, steadying herself. Not by design, but it can become so if it cannot interpret our intentions. Evan nodded. Then we move slowly. No sudden changes. We show it we are not a threat. She looked at him with a soft, almost grateful expression. You speak like one who understands the fragile things in the world. He felt the words settle somewhere deep, but before he could answer, the shimmer in the air grew clearer, forming the faint outline of a shape. Soft, unfinished, like light, trying to remember what it once looked like. Lyrian's breath caught, just slightly. It knows me, she whispered. But it does not know that I am no longer what it expects. Evan glanced between her and the emerging shape. The morning light reflected off her features, softening the tension in her face. He stepped a little closer to her, grounding them both. Then we help it understand, he said quietly. The outline flickered again, brighter now, as the canyon's air warmed around them, carrying the soft echo of something ancient finally waking. The shape in the air steadied, its outline soft but undeniable, as if light itself had paused long enough to remember a form it once carried. Evan felt the warmth around them shift, wrapping the space in a hush that was neither threatening nor welcoming, simply aware. Lyrian stood very still beside him, her silver-blue skin catching small threads of brightness from the forming construct. Her breathing slowed, not out of fear but recognition, a quiet acknowledgement of something older than memory. The shape pulsed gently, responding to her presence with a tremor of soft light. Evan glanced at her, reading the quiet strain in her eyes. "What does it want?" he asked, keeping his voice low, more breath than sound. Lyrian lifted her hand slowly, palm visible, as if greeting an animal that had forgotten trust. "It seeks alignment," she whispered. "It was created to mirror our emotional fields. It does not know how to be without them." Evan took that in, watching the construct flicker as if trying to match the rhythm of her breath. "Then it is confused," he said softly. "You are not its past." Lyrian nodded once. "I am not, but it feels the echo of what I was born from." Her voice softened even more. "And it is." Reaching for that echo, the construct drifted an inch closer, its light brightening for a brief moment. Not aggressive, not curious, just searching. Lyrian inhaled deeply and stepped forward. Evan felt a subtle pull in the air as she moved, as if the space around them adjusted to her presence. She stopped a few inches from the shimmering form, her expression calm but certain. "You are not alone," she said, her tone steady, almost tender. "But you must let go of what you remember. I am not the one you seek." The construct quivered, its form rippling like disturbed water. Evan stepped closer beside her, his presence deliberate but gentle. He did not touch her, but the space between them tightened, their proximity forming a quiet line of solidarity that even the canyon seemed to acknowledge. Lyrian's breath trembled, just once, before realigning with his. The shared rhythm steadied her. The construct responded instantly, mirroring the slow rise and fall of their breath. Evan watched its glow soften, the pulsing slowing into something calm, almost peaceful. "It is listening," he murmured. Lyrian nodded. "It understands balance." That is all it was ever meant to hold. She lowered her hand, letting it fall naturally to her side. "We can give it that for a moment." They stood together, breathing in quiet synchrony, their calm shaping the space around them. The construct shimmered, each pulse gentler than the last, until the bright outline eased into a soft, diffuse glow. Then, like mist touched by sunlight, it thinned, and thinned again, and faded. The air settled. The warmth dispersed. Lyrian exhaled, the breath leaving her in a slow, unsteady stream. Evan turned toward her. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her eyes held a distant ache. "It was not alive," she said softly, "but it remembered the ones who made it." Letting go is difficult, even for something that only knows reflection. Evan's voice dropped. "You helped it understand." She looked at him then, something fragile and luminous moving behind her eyes. "We helped it," she corrected. Behind them, the canyon stretched out in quiet gold, untouched except for the fading warmth in the air. The relay pulsed once from his pocket, a faint reminder that help would come. But for now, the world around them felt suspended, held in a silence shaped by breath, understanding, and the soft glow of something ancient. Finding peace. Lyrian's gaze lingered on Evan's, steady and calm. In her eyes, the morning light reflected gently, and for the first time since they met, it looked unmistakably human.